I mean, there's lots of things that happen in the Bible. I always laugh when people tell me the Bible is boring. And I'm like, really? Because every action movie you can imagine is in the Bible. Every kind of crazy thing that could happen is in the Bible. And not green screen special effects. Do you know what I mean? Like true, real life happenings. And so I want to talk about a character that that frustrates me at times because I see him in a lot of people. And I want to talk about Samson. So we're talking about Samson, and Samson's story can be found Judges 15 and Judges 16. And Samson was a guy who was set apart. So when he was born, God told his parents, don't let him have any wine, don't cut his hair, he has to eat certain things, he's only allowed to do this, this, and this, and this. And so Samson grew up with a lot of restrictions in his life. But there was a calling on his life. And so he was raised in a time of Israel's just wicked history. And he became one of the judges. So when things went wrong, he was kind of the guy that was in charge. This is before they had kings. And so when we get to Judges 16, verses 1 to 4, we begin to see that Samson hasn't lived up to his potential. We often say, oh, there's so much potential in somebody, so much possibility in somebody. But he didn't live up to it. In fact, he did the exact opposite of what he was called to do. And so he cultivated a life of disobedience. So when we find Samson in Judges 16, he's actually going to the place where the prostitutes are. Am I not on? Oh, great. Turn me down. I'm really tired. I'm so sorry. I really am. I'm energized by the worship. I love seeing your beautiful faces. I'm going to really love seeing my bed later on. Okay, here we go. So Samson is the place where the prostitutes are. And you don't know where the prostitutes are unless you go looking for them. And this isn't his first time at the rodeo. Right? He's a man who's been called to God's purpose, and yet he's living a life contrary to what God has called him to. And the worst part is, he's not even hiding it. Right? He's not trying to be sneaky. Listen, I have this saying, and when I used to be a youth pastor, parents used to get mad at me because I would say this, but I would say, let your shame hang out. If you're going to sin, sin out loud. Because I can't fix anything. I can't help you with anything if I don't know what's happening. So if you're going to sin, do it in public. Because eventually your private life and your public life, they kind of intertwine, and people are going to find out what's going on. But Samson, he's not even, what's going on now? Okay. Samson is in a place where people know where he is. And the worst part is when they find him in this very first section of chapter verses 1 to 4. The Philistines come upon him, and their plan is to take him captive or to kill him, and he thwarts them because they're waiting in the morning, right? They're like, he'll sleep it off, he's going to come out in the morning, but he doesn't. He comes out in the middle of the night. And then instead of just leaving, he breaks the gates. His arrogance is out of control. He's cultivating a life of sin. He's not humble, and he doesn't care who knows it. And this is a man God has called, right? I have a problem with Samson because of this. A little while later, we read that Samson is found in the house of a woman called Delilah. So Delilah was a Philistine. She was living in Philistine land. There's nothing, we don't know for sure that she was a prostitute, but she was a woman of means. So probably. There's not a lot actually told about Delilah. And she was ready to betray Samson. And Samson had fallen in love with Delilah. Samson had fallen in love with Delilah, and Delilah was not in love with him. She wasn't loyal to him. She was loyal to her people. She was a person who was held in high esteem amongst her people. So why would she go with the disobedient giant rather than with her people? And the problem is that when you read from verses 4 to 17, Delilah says to Samson all the time, Samson, tell me the secret of your strength. In fact, she does that 3 times. And Samson every time lies to her. So again, how much love does this man have for this woman? If you braid my hair, I'm as weak as a kitten. She braids her hair. Samson, Samson, the Philistines are here. Gets up, breaks out, no problem. So lie number 1. If you tie my hair with certain pieces of wood, whatever the lie is, she believes him. And every time he tells her a lie, she tells the Philistines, and the exact same happens, and he gets up and he leaves. But the funny thing is he keeps coming back. I don't know about you, but there's that saying that says, fool me once, shame on me, or shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Well, 3 times? Like, seriously, bud? Right? Like, come on. How stupid are you? Or is he arrogant? Is he arrogant to think that it doesn't matter what happens because he's going to find a way to get out of it? And so when you play with fire, you will get burned. Judges 16:18-22 says that he placed his trust in someone who proved over and over again that she did not care. She didn't care. And so finally she throws a wicked fit. How many of you know that when Shakespeare said, hell hath no fury like a woman who's scorned? Right? Women, when they're angry, they're not fun to look at. Right? They're not nice to be around. Some women, oh my goodness, the fit. They make a 2-year-old toddler throwing a fit look like child's play. I have seen women like become so enraged that things happen and you're just like, I don't think I'll ever see that again. It's not nice. And so she pitches a fit, a royal fit. You got to be careful with that word. You know, like Bridezilla and everything else all combined into one, I'm telling you. Right? I was just at my niece's 15th birthday party. It's quinceañera, it's called. It's a Spanish thing. And it's a mini wedding. Ball gowns, banquet hall. Her friend had one on the same night. She was drawn in with a horse and carriage with matching white horses, and her dress was a wedding dress. I'm telling you, Spanish people, they got that party thing down. I'm letting you know. Now, my niece is much more reasonable, and so hers was just very nice, and it was still very elaborate, but it wasn't, there were no horses involved. There might have been some donkeys involved, but there were no horses involved. But I digress here. I'm just saying that there are some times where things were happening and the anger that just started to erupt was crazy, and women, they were just really good at it. So husbands, be nice to your wives, because you don't know what's going to happen if you fall asleep. Just saying. Or you leave and come home. You may not have any more clothes. I've actually seen this happen a few times. So when we allow ourselves to play with fire, we're going to get burned. When we allow ourselves to be with people who are not godly, the actions and attitudes are eventually going to rub off on us. And again, Samson is in this place where he should not be, and he's with his enemy, and that is not something that's okay. And yet God still is with him. And so she pitches this massive fit, and Samson's like, okay, just stop. My ears are hurting. If you shave my head, I will become as weak as a kitten. I can't do anything if you shave my head. And so he falls asleep. Now, I have a question. Like, how deep of a sleeper is Samson when a woman can shave your head? I mean, somebody even brushes me when I'm sleeping, and I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? Right? But his head is shaved. Like, it's gone. There's nothing left. And she says, Samson, Samson, the Philistines are upon you, just like she's said many times before. And what happens? Samson gets up, and this is the verse that scares me more than any other verse written in the Bible. And it says that Samson did not know that the Spirit of God had left him. He had cultivated a life that was so apart from God that he didn't even know when God was no longer there because he never really cared before. He was arrogant in his thought that God was never going to leave him. If you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. If you cultivate a life that is contrary to the life God has called you to, eventually God is going to say, have your way. And he's going to leave. And it terrifies me that there are people who don't even know when God's presence is gone. And this verse, when I first read it, kept me up at nights because I thought, oh God, please never let me be so arrogant as to think that I can do anything apart from you. And the Philistines come in and they capture him because he's got nothing left. And they take him and they gouge his eyes out. And they tie him to a threshing machine. And for years, he walks in a big old circle. The man of God, who cultivated a life of disobedience and was now paying the consequences of that. In absolute darkness, sometimes that's when we see the light. Judges 16:23-30 talks about there's a great celebration. There's a great celebration. The Philistines are high on life. They're high on the fact that they are in complete control. They no longer have a Samson who's wreaking havoc on their country, on their people. And he's a prisoner. And he's nothing more than a slave. And so there's a big party. They're going to honor their god Dagon. And they think they have this great idea. They're like, bring Samson. Chain him so that he can entertain us. Basically, they're saying, dance, monkey, dance. And so he comes to the party. They're all doing whatever it is that they do at their parties. And Samson's there. And Samson has a moment of truth. So while Samson's been trudging on this circular round and about, his hair started to grow back. So that's what happens, right? Shave, hair grows. At least you hope it does. So his hair started to grow back. God does not leave us no matter what. God's spirit left Samson, but God's eyes never did. He saw Samson. He watched Samson. He mourned for Samson. And Samson comes to this place where, with no eyes, he's chained between these two pillars, and he can feel them. And he finally comes to himself and says, God, just let me die. And let me take the Philistines with me. And God is a God of second chances, and of third chances, and of fourth chances, and of fifth chances, and of every chance that you could possibly need, because he does not let go of that which is his. And God hears when we pray with sincere and contrite hearts. I always tell people, when you pray and ask for forgiveness of sin, it's not like, oh, God, forgive me, and then go out and do the same thing that you just did. But it's that God, forgive me, and then you turn around and you walk the opposite way.
And I tell my nieces all the time, they're always like, well, I'm sorry, Auntie. And I'm like, yeah, are you really sorry? Because this is like the 8th time this has happened. And if I say, okay, is it going to happen again? They always get mad at me. And it's like, so now there's an attitude here too. And so it's a good thing I'm loved by my nieces and nephews, because I torment them, I'm sure. But God is a God who gives second chances, and he hears us when we pray. He knows our hearts. He knows when we're really being honest, and when we're really being who he's called us to be, when we're really being who he created us to be. And Samson comes to this point where he finally gets it. At the end of his life, he lived a life. But at the end of it, he finally gets it. And God gives him the strength, and he pushes the pillars, and the entire building collapses. And it says in the Bible that when that happened, he killed more Philistines in his death than he did in his entire life. And his brothers and his father came down, and they collected his body and took him home to bury him. It's not a nice story, at least not to me. So what? The question always comes down to so what? Are you making choices to be successful? At what cost? Are you keeping company with people who are invested in your success and are life-giving? Or are you keeping company with people who are all about speaking harm, all about speaking death over you? Sometimes we have friends that we hold on to because we've had them forever, but they're not good for us. They don't bring life. They don't bring encouragement. They only bring death. I had a friend I had for many, many years, over 20 years. And life went different for us. She chose to live a life that was different from the path that we had always followed together. And she wanted me to be okay with it. And my response was always, it's your life, but it's not a good one. Like, you know better. We grew up together, you know. And it just got to the point where it was like, I can't, because every time something happens and you tell me you're looking for me to say, that's okay, you're a good person. And I couldn't do it because it wasn't okay and it wasn't a good thing. And eventually I had to sever that relationship. And it was hard because, like I said, we were friends for over 20 years. Nobody knew me like she did. Nobody knew her like I did. But when it came down to her and God, wasn't a choice. Samson made bad choices. And he allowed people who were not good for him to be a part of his life. No one ever held him accountable. No one ever told him what he could or could not do because he wouldn't listen. And so are the company of people you're keeping, are they good people? Are they godly people? Are they wise people? Are they people committed to you succeeding? Or are they just people that want to tear you down and want you to tear others down as well? And where is the Spirit of God in all of this? Is he with you? Have you wandered so far that you're not even sure anymore? It's okay if you've wandered. We all wander. It's part of finding out who we are in God. The point is, get back on the path. Samson did it at the end of his life. And I just think, oh, Samson, what you could have done. What great story could have been written about you. Instead of a love song about Romeo and Juliet, Samson and Delilah. The star-crossed lovers. Only Samson and Delilah were not star-crossed lovers. Delilah didn't like Samson. So That's okay, I only heard it. When we ask God to speak, when we ask God to call, when we ask God to give us, are we willing to live the life that he wants us to? The world looks really good, I understand that. If sin wasn't fun, people wouldn't do it. The problem with sin is that when you sin, the next time you do it, it has to be bigger because this no longer is satisfying. So I got to add to it. And then when that's no longer satisfying, I got to add to it. And so on, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Right? One of the stories that gets told a lot, and I'm sure you've heard it, a lot of pastors use it. Dr. James Dobson, who is a psychologist and Focus on the Family is his ministry. He was the only person invited to interview Ted Bundy before he died. Ted Bundy was a serial rapist and killer in the States in the 70s, I believe. And when asked why, he said one day he was taking out the trash and inside of his trash barrel was a dirty magazine. And he picked it up and read it. And then it grew, because when that no longer worked for him, he found things that were more deviant. And when that no longer worked for him, he found things that were more deviant. When that no longer worked for him, he started to rape women. And when that no longer worked for him, he started to rape them and then kill them. Because he looked at a dirty magazine. It doesn't take much. That's why those songs, be careful little eyes what you see. Oh, be careful little eyes what you see. There's a Father up above and he's looking down in love. Oh, be careful little eyes what you see. Those are still good songs. and we sing them to our kids for a reason. But sometimes we need to sing them to our youth and our adults and even our seniors. So, that being said, and all of that is, are you living a life of Samson? That you think nobody notices, that you don't care if anybody notices, that you are running from God in so many ways? Do you need to get back on the path? Has the Spirit of God left you? Do you even know? Do you even care? Because it's choice. It's choice. You can choose how you want to live. That's what God gave us. You know, people often say, I don't understand, bad things happen and you know, people get killed and they don't deserve it and everything like that. You're right, they don't. But you know what? That person who killed them, they had a choice. And if God takes away their choice, he's not a good God. And I think that's the hardest thing about what God did, is that he gave us all choice, not just those that choose to serve him. And so Samson chose wrong. Question is, what are you choosing today? So I kind of have a heavy sermon, eh? Okay. Yeah, it is. It is. But God's word is not always light and fun and encouraging in a happy way. Sometimes it's disciplining, and sometimes it's harsh. You ever want to know how harsh God is? Read the book of Jeremiah. It took me a long time to get through that book because I was just like, oh God, please don't kill me. Like, he is angry. In the book of Jeremiah, God is angry. And I'm thinking, yep, not so much a Santa Claus God, eh? All right, we're going to, what are we going to do now? We're going to do the Father's Day thing. Yeah. Well, I'm like, I think it's time. All right. How many of you are fathers here? Stand on up. Come on. Now, Tim, you better stand up because I made your wife stand up. So just don't even fight me on this. Come on. There you go. Listen, I have an amazing father. His name is God. He doesn't leave me. He doesn't forsake me. He gives me